Startup Folsom.
So I would like to introduce our guest tonight. It's JP Morgan. He is the Chief Innovation Officer for HMCI. Got it? And most notably, just recently, I don't know if it's recently, but they actually brokered, correct me if I'm wrong, brokered a deal between Nvidia and the city of Rancho Cordova. And we could talk about it in our fireside chat. And then I'll do a few interview questions. And then shortly after that, you guys can ask, it's open season on JP.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to have, and in fact, I met you like a few years ago. It was like one of those it was a chamber thing.
Yeah.
And and I remember you introducing yourself, and quite honestly, I had no idea what you were doing. I have to break it down, and I just thought think tank is kind of what I got out of it.
Yeah. I think that's and it's not me. It's more Sadie. I just go out and evangelize, right? That's really all I do.
So in preparing for this, I kind of looked at your LinkedIn, and you have this mixture of working for public sector, nonprofits. What else? And actually, it looks like you were also an entrepreneur yourself. Hey, Nicholas, do I know you? And so tell me what was your journey here? Just kind of on a 10,000 foot.
I started out in finance, so asset-backed securities. So think of looking at large amounts of data for commercial and residential mortgages and how those get packaged, and they get sent to the Security Exchange Commission through REMICs or trusts to be sold in secondary markets. So we did a lot of risk analytics. There wasn't really data science back then. That didn't really happen until 2012, so everybody was just an analyst, kind of what everybody did. And so spent some time in that, and then had a chance to work in the law space with a company out of Roseville, helping them look at, so attorneys aren't good at math, surprisingly. That's just not their game. And so I was brought in to help them think about when they were involved in lawsuits with banking institutions around how some of this debt got transferred. So if you guys remember 2008, it was pretty terrible. So commercial banks had the opportunity to foreclose on debt, right? But the debt, when you borrow money for a commercial loan, for a property, there's a personal guarantee. So there's more reason for you to want to fight that, right? As opposed to a lot of residential homes where people are I just get my home, move on, go somewhere else. So a lot of wealthy commercial people before 2008 kind of lost their shirt. A lot of people lost money. So the law firm I was at, we helped them kind of build models to understand risk and how they thought about it from a litigation standpoint, right? So spent time doing that, and randomly, it's kind of who you know, I had a dear friend who ran IT on the side for them. So just randomly IT. Asked me if I wanted to start a software company. I was I have no idea what that takes. So his dad ran a very large software company, and so they brought me in, and we kind of built this thing. It was called Grassroots On Call, and we did letter writing advocacy software for lobbyists and associations.
Interesting.
And if you were to, I could probably build it now in a week, right, with all the tools that we have. But it took us 2 years. A lot of Python. A lot of integrating tools the hard way. So, you're literally writing like you're talking about, deterministic. You're literally writing connections and watching them break and start over. So got a chance to really kind of dive into that. We had some really good success. We ended up scaling it pretty well. And then in 2019, we parted ways. And I got a chance to go into the advocacy kind of, I'd say, advising side of government. Because a lot of my clients were lobbyists and associations. And spent some time there. And then Sadie, at the same time, had kind of reached a point with women in data where they were really starting to cook, do really cool stuff. It's a global organization for women in data science and analytics and now AI.
Did she found it? Or
yeah, she founded that in Sacramento in 20.
So it's did she found the regional one, or did she find
everything? She's the boss applesauce, right?
Right. So boss applesauce.
She started it. So it started in Sacramento. It's an industry term. Yeah. So she started that out of Rancho Cordova. she was at VSP, and then she built that from 2015, and I think about 2019, 2020, they started to really look at like, how do you think about leveraging the community and letting some of the community members do creative stuff in the analytics space. And so I was asked to come in and go, how do you get grants? Like, how does that work? And anybody who's ever worked in procurement or understand grant process, I don't think anybody has a written system for it. I think they all make it up as they go. I think every agency has their own rules. So my job was to go out and find ways to bring in opportunities where women in data could grow. And we were very successful in that. And in about 2023, Sadie asked me, she was like, hey, I want to start this organization called HMCI, Human Machine Collaboration Institute. And the reason she called it that was she believed that as AI became hot in 2022, 2023, well, large language models, I should say, when it started to become popular and people could use it, she was like, hey, this is going to change everything. When people start to figure this out, we're going to have to create on-ramps. And we're going to have to start thinking about research because the technology is going to move faster than research can move. Mm-hmm. And I think we've seen a lot of that with research coming out of private groups. I mean, we see Google's dropping research. We see Anthropic dropping research. OpenAI's dropping research. We've got kids on GitHub dropping research, just like, hey, here's where the future's going. And it's really changed the dynamic of that. So she saw that really early on, and we started to go down this road. And she started to write white papers, and she was submitting them to different friends of hers at different companies. So she wrote one to OpenAI, she wrote one to Nvidia, all these different groups. And the Nvidia one caught traction, actually. So late 2013, 2014, she wrote a white paper and said that the future of workforce is going to be led by individuals, small organizations, and junior colleges. She did not believe universities were going to lead research. And she had a whole breakdown. She was like, look, the average cost of research project is $500,000 to $5 million. Only 67 of the however many universities on the planet get funding, like over like an X number of dollars. I think that's like 90% of the funding we spend in the United States goes to about 67 universities, of which 33 get $1 billion or more, right? So it's a very small group of people that produce research. So she was like, we have to go back to the old Bell Labs model, which is we need to generate revenue and use that revenue to do cool research, because nobody's going to fund the research we want to do because it's too far ahead. So we have to be half research institute, meaning internal labs, we do our own stuff. External, we do research for other groups. And then professional services. We can help you. We can build stuff with you. We can build stuff for you. We can deploy stuff for you. So that was her thinking. I was like, yeah, that sounds crazy. Let's do it. And Nvidia came back and said, if you could do any project, what would you do? And she said, well, wherever we build HMCI, I want to build an ecosystem. And they were like, okay, what does that mean? She said, well, we have to find a way to get government, education, and enterprise to start working together. And in a meaningful way, not a, oh, I'll give you money, and oh, you do this thing, and oh, maybe it'll work. She was like, hey, we have to really think about how do we get enterprise to talk about their issues around AI and adopting this technology, share that with the universities and the education systems so they can create curriculum that actually has applicable value to those workforces coming out. How do we get the enterprise corporations to also start thinking about how to upskill their workforce and share that the money and the R&D they spend, how do we bring that down to the local economy? And then how do we get government to stop incentivizing the wrong things? So we see all the time government will say, well, we're going to do $1 million for workforce training. And they go, cool. And they'll spend it. You can look at this. This is crazy. And then you go, okay, what happened to the workforce training a year later? They're like, it was good. And you go,
There's no tracking, is what you're saying?
Zero. Well, and the problem with not tracking it is you don't know what the impact is.
Well, you don't know.
And if you can't measure, how do you know the quality of the outcome, right? So it might be really smart to give $1 million to, XYZ organization.
How would you know?
You don't know. And here's the craziest part. The standard is against the U.S., right? So the U.S. labor markets and how we think about labor, and the U.S. government measures it at about 15 to 17%. That's success to them. So if you're at the 15 to 70%, meaning if 100 people get workforce trained and 17 people get a job, that was excellent. That's an A. Doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make any sense. So we started to think about this, and we go, well, why is it so bad? And so we called our buddies at the feds, and they were like, it's guesstimation. I was like, what do you mean it's guesstimation? They're like, we track it. But what happens is the agency tracks it, and then we hand it to the nonprofit or the group that tracks it. Well, then they usually hand that to somebody else who tracks it regionally, and then they try to track it, and they just kind of fill in the numbers, and we get it back, and we just kind of do an average, right? Now, some are better than others, so I don't want to disparage anybody, but this was kind of what we saw. And so she was like, I want to build an ecosystem to the Nvidia question. And they said, okay, well, what does that look like? And where would you do it? And she said, well, I don't know yet, but I want to do it in Rancho Cordova. And you got to understand, Nvidia is now a $5 trillion company. And they're in San Jose. And they're obviously global. Yeah, and when you say, yes, I was at the convention center. There's San Jose. When you look at the reaction in the room with the people when we said Rancho Cordova, half of them were like, where? And the other groups that knew where it was, they're like, why? Right? Like, this is terrible, right? But what Sadie was smart at, I give her a lot of credit. I take no credit for this. She had done a bunch of homework on Solidigm. And if everybody knows Solidigm, they were purchased by SK Hynix from Intel. And what she said is, look, I'm a data scientist by trade, and I'm a neuroscientist before that, so I understand how the brain works. Memory's going to be a thing. They just don't know it yet. And so NVIDIA's like, okay, why? And she goes, well, if memory becomes a thing, Solidigm makes memory for data centers. And if they get good, they're going to grow, and they're probably going to IPO. And if they IPO, it'll be the first IPO in the region since 2015. And it'll be the biggest IPO in the region. And she guesstimated at the time $10 billion. She was about a little off. So they're estimated now at about $90 billion to IPO because memory got big. So she saw this coming, right? And her three basic principles were, we have to find a way to get workforce trained for the region in a central location. We need to find a city that believes in it enough to invest in it, and we'll bring the outside partners in. And you need an orchestrator. You need a central player that sole focus is to keep the momentum going. No different than what you do with your organization or what you do with the organizations you do. How do you find somebody that's going to get up every morning and go, my goal is to convince all of us here to work together for the betterment of one region, right? And so it's almost like a GSET, right? Like they do that for economic development. She was like, I want to do that for technology and innovation, right? And I will tell you, it was the hardest 2 years of convincing people that this was a good idea. It's not a good idea. It could be a good idea. Why are you the one to do it? All these crazy things, right? But we were able to convince everybody it was a good idea. SMUD came into the room and said, hey, look, we can't do everything, but we support you. They showed up at the council meeting, supported us. Nvidia showed up, Solidigm showed up, Farm GPU showed up, the whole community showed up. And since then, we were able to build that out. And that's how I became an innovation officer, is I just hung out with the right people, I guess. That was really it. I didn't do anything. I just hung out with the right people.
So what is the, and that's the other thing, I'm not really sure. What is it, now that you got this partnership, what is it?
So it's 4 stages. And I'll tell you the second stage, although I'm going to probably get in trouble for telling it because we're recording, but I'll do it anyways. So the first stage was, you got to build the garden. That was her mindset, which is find all the partners that are willing to be part of this orchestration between government, education, and enterprise. Get them all to commit to the same vision. First and foremost, what is the vision? The vision is, how do we build a regional hub for innovation around AI and robotics? Because physical AI and digital AI, that's where things are going to go, right? And how do we bring partners in that actually know this stuff? Because yes, Intel is here, but is there an industry partner that we felt was the most knowledgeable? And Nvidia kind of fits that bill. They're, like you talked about, they're jumping into spaces where everybody's going, what are you doing? But if you know anything about Jensen, he bragged 30% of his conversation yesterday was, I told you last time I was going to do this, told you, and then he was right about everything, right? So this time he came out and did the exact same thing. So having those really smart people to kind of advise us and guide us on where the ball is moving helps us out immensely. The second part of that ecosystem was the government side. So it wasn't just Rancho Cordova. We're talking to Folsom now. We're talking to the county now. We also have friends at USDA, Space Force, which is a real thing. I thought it was fake. It's totally a real thing. We have friends at the Fed side. So Sadie, before she started this, under the Biden administration, she was part of the advisory council for data science and equity and inclusion. So under the Trump administration, she still has friends that call her and go, hey, here's where the ball's going, right? So we looked at that and said, okay, if we build the foundation, we find the partners, we get everybody on a centralized mission, and then we start building the infrastructure for that mission. So phase 2, which hasn't been announced yet, you guys will be the first to know about it, is we reached out to UC Davis, Sac State, Folsom Lake College, and Folsom Cordova Unified School District, and we said, hey, and I haven't told you this yet, you're going to love this. We said, we need to do 3 things. We need to build a K through career campus in Rancho Cordova. We don't want to move it here, move it there. We want you to commit to get real estate. We'll help. We'll find money. But we want the K through 12, the community college, and the university to be on the same page. And we need you to be working to build that workforce out for the region. Why? Because A, we know that now we can get Solidigm to come in and say, these are the things we need from engineers. These are the things we need to teach our marketing. These are the things we need to teach our communications majors, right? Right now that doesn't happen, right? So what happens now is universities, junior colleges, although Folsom Lake College is probably one of the dopest community colleges in the state. I will give Art all credit for that. And even K through 12. They all sit in a box like this, and they talk about their idea of how they're going to change the world in education, and it's always a caveat. But we got to see what the next guy's doing. I know, I sit on a lot of these boards, and you go, okay. And, there's a joke about ideas. A committee is where good ideas go to die, right? Nothing happens. So you're sitting in these rooms, and you have the K through 12 people going, well, I want to teach my 7th graders this, but I need to know what they learned in 6th grade. Because if I try to teach them this in 7th grade and they didn't learn what they needed to in 6th grade, they're going to be in trouble, right? Well, then they go, okay, but we also don't want to teach our 9th graders this, because what if what we're teaching them in 9th, 10th, and 11th grade doesn't fit at the community college? And I go, well, why don't you call the community college? And they go, oh, we're not going to do that. This is a real thing, right? Hence the orchestrator, all right? So Sadie sat in a room. I was in the room with Nvidia, Solidigm, universities, community colleges, and the K through 12, and she said, I need all of you to come together and commit. I don't know how we're going to do it. I have zero clue how we're going to fund it. But if we don't do it, we're going to regret not doing it. And eventually we're going to do it later, and it's going to cost us way more money. So how do we get everybody in a room to commit to how are we going to share education? How are we going to think about upskilling and reskilling? And how are all of us going to contribute to the upskilling and reskilling of the workforce in general? Because right now you have amazing organizations like Valley Vision. You've got all these different groups that are really trying to do workforce, but everything's still in a silo, right? Nobody's going to Nvidia and saying, hey, what should we do for workforce? How do we do that, right? Nobody's going to SMUD and going, hey, you guys are AI infrastructure. What do you need? Like, how many people do we need to train for what you're doing? Now, Sierra College might be, so I don't want to disparage them. They're pretty damn smart. But, but as a whole, this isn't happening. So this is what the ecosystem really is. It's no different than what we're doing here, which is how do we force, in a polite way, how do we force people to come to the table and contribute? So right now we have the advisory board just got picked. SMUD's on it. Well, let me say, SMUD's pending approval. Let me say that. Be very, very, very concise there. We've got Kaiheen Morton, Deputy Treasurer for the state of California. He's on it. Solidigm's on it. Nvidia's on it. We've got Folsom Lake College is on it. Folsom Cordova is on it. UC Davis is on it. Center of Analytics. Wait, no. It's CATS. Center of Analytics and Technology. Yeah, there we go. So there are all these people coming together, and they're like, hey, man, this is cool. And I think a lot of people forget, in the Sacramento region, there is no greater concentration of tech nerds than the 50 corridor. There isn't. Like, look at it. Like, go on a map and look at all these companies. Right here is some of the best concentration of some of the smartest people you're going to get. A lot of them are from the Bay Area. A lot of them are here. I was just speaking at San Jose State yesterday. San Jose State produces more engineers that get hired in Silicon Valley than Berkeley or Stanford. So it's not unheard of, right? It's just they were ahead of the curve. They did a partnership with Nvidia. We kind of took a cue from them. And now they want to talk about it. I talked to their president yesterday. They're like, hey, how do we do a sister partnership with Sac State? Like, how do we start thinking about these things to bring more resources here so we can build here and protect everybody here? Because it is going to be disruptive, right? But if we don't have the resources, you're going to get a lot of disruption and no resolution, right? So that's what we're building. So, and then phase 3, I can't tell you. And phase 4, I can't tell you. Sadie will kill me. But if you think about the stack, right? Built the foundation. Now we're building the education and workforce, right? So then the next 2 things we're going to build are going to come after that in the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
6 to 12 months.
Mm-hmm. Well, we only got 24 months, so we got to build it all in 24 months. I don't know how we're going to do it, but
So phase 2, is it? Are you actually building a school? Is that?
I don't know. I don't know. We'll see.
It's a school stack, basically, right?
It's just like a tech stack. Yeah. We think of everything as tech stacks, right? So it's, your K through 12, your JC, university, and then you try to go master's degree, PhD, right? But then you also have this workforce component over here, because not every kid's going to go out to be a super technique like engineer. Because, I mean, a lot of the stuff you got to think, like if you're building the stuff he's talking about, you're talking about linear algebra, matrix math. You're talking about people learning stuff that you had to be taking calculus and good at it in high school.
So you're aligning supply and demand, basically.
You have to. Well, what we call it, so Sadie has a white paper on it. I'm hoping we can release it. She called it workforce manufacturing. So it's instead of workforce development, you can't develop workforce anymore. You have to manufacture it, right? You have to really be intentional, deterministic, right, with how you're going to build this, right? Otherwise, you're going to run into problems. And now there's a lot of money coming out. You know this better than anybody. There's insane amounts of dollars coming out for workforce right now. I was just talking about Ben. I always mess his last name up. Candrahill?
No, Candernell.
Yeah, Candranell. Yeah, so how much did Sierra College, they secured $35 million in workforce dollars, right? Federal government just came out February 13th or 16th and said, we're going to dump a bunch of money into labor, right? They see it. Everybody sees it. Like, we have to get people better at learning how to use these tools or it's going to suck, right? Sorry, I went on a rant. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's all about you here.
No, I mean, it's about you guys, man. I'm just sharing.
So actually, I think you kind of gave us got us to here, kind of where I kind of wanted to be, and I'm just going to open it up to the audience here for questions. And actually, just repeat the question so they could.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there's a question, we'll repeat it.
My question is, I know there's a whole bunch of AI startups that are happening across the 50 corridor. Have you considered partnering with, especially because these AI companies need interns to come and help them out with, different pieces of coding?
That's so cool.
Have you considered partnering?
So have we considered partnering with all of the startups and AI in the 50 corridor? That was the question? Okay. So yes, and what we're working on right now, and I'm not going to say the city because I'll get in trouble, but I'll tell you.
On the record.
Off the record. Our argument right now is money is not going to, unless you're a startup. Let me start. If you're trying to attract AI companies, money's not going to get it done, right? You're not going to convince a funded AI company to move to Rancho or Folsom or anywhere because you can give them incentives. And economic development has always worked on incentives. We'll give you money, we'll give you credits, come work for here. And there was a very cool symbiotic relationship with that. It doesn't work like that anymore. All right, it's very much changing. So our third level of the stack, to answer your question, is how do we start bringing in the venture cap to start funding this stuff, right? What we're trying to do right now with cities is get them to start thinking about incentives around the concept of compute and internships, right? Don't pay for employees. Pay to sponsor interns. Oh, did you get a call?
No, it's a slow battery.
Oh, okay. It's okay. If it dies, it dies. We'll come back next week. I got you. So what we're trying to do is get cities to start thinking about incentivizing companies with intern cost. So right now, if you bring in a $100,000 job, a city will give you like $10,000 or $20,000, right? So my question, and we've started asking them, is like, well, what if you could sponsor 10 interns for 20 companies and let them kind of work with these multiple companies, 2 days here, 3 days here, work remote. And we're exploring that concept. We talked to a couple of larger companies that are like, well, we would take that. Like, yeah, give us more interns. Because we only have finite constraint because companies right now aren't hiring more, they're cutting back, right? So they're like, hey, if we can get interns, that'd be awesome. So I hope that we can convince more cities to do that. And as far as partnering, we're currently working on how we can partner better, faster. But that's primarily in Rancho right now. So.
What jurisdiction would a K through 12 fall under in this scenario?
So what was that?
What jurisdiction would this K through 12 fall under? Like Folsom Cordova Unified School District, or like is it? Like
Yeah, so it is Folsom Cordova Unified School District. Where the school would be, we still got to figure that out. So what school would actually have the teachers, the resources to be able to support kind of what we're doing. But I know right now we're talking to their team about like just how do we pilot that? How do we think about that? But we're making pretty good progress. But yeah, it'll be Folsom Cordova Unified.
So are you looking in that particular case, are you looking for an elementary, middle school, high school that works together?
So it's funny because I'm not an educator. So usually when I go into these meetings, everything I say is dumb because I don't know how it works. I just don't know how it works. What I find is they're very intentional on, no, it needs to be this first and then this. So they want to do like high school, STEM school concept and then kind of work their way backwards over time. So that's kind of where we're starting right now is more like high school, middle school level and then work our way through that process.
And is the focus going to be AI focused or more general tech or like just enabling for this what's coming? Like what's the focus?
So great question. So the focus is kind of three parts. So the first is if you're going to look at like engineers and people who are building this stuff, that's a very small collective group of people that are going to do that. And so how do we get the best resources to them? That's first and foremost. The second is how do we start getting everybody else to learn how to use these tools in a way that's meaningful, much like he talked about, right? Which is Justin mentioned like context is key. And as these things start to get better and better and better, what you'll notice is the context window keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. There's a reason for that, right? So what we're finding is, and even in our own company, we have to go back and rethink workflow. Like so forever, right? Physical, digital. That's how companies have operated. Physical, and then you had the digital. Hey, we got the internet. We got all this data science now. We got all these tools and technology. We implement. All works together. What you know if you've been in the technology space is most of the companies are 100% physical, 60% digital. Like there's still stuff that's siloed, it doesn't work, but nobody really cares because it's better than what it used to be. Well, when you're starting to add an intelligence layer, it's completely disrupting these companies that didn't take technology adoption seriously. Like the big data movement, like how do you move data, how do you use vector databases, right? Yeah. If your data sucks, but you got a lot of it, unstructured data, AI is great for that, right? But if you want outcomes that are in the highest percentile of probabilistically right, you need to have it figured out, right? So that's a problem. So companies are having to rethink that. Well, when they start rethinking that, you have to start thinking about how does your workforce rethink using those tools in that process, because now I've got AI in this process, so where are they in the loop? To give you an idea of how deep this goes, at GTC yesterday, I got to sit in a room with people who were talking about the future 3 years out, going, we're going to have to start thinking about, and this is what Jensen said, companies are going to be driven by token throughput. That's going to be the new labor metric, is how much tokens did I have to spend to get product output? Now, if you think about that, that means that if I'm in a company, I'm going to start allotting a specific amount of tokens to a job. So I'm going to say, look, you only get 200,000 tokens in a year. And I need you to do all the things you're supposed to do with 200,000 tokens. Think about how crazy that is, right? Then they start talking about, well, what's the HR going to be? Is there such thing as token discrimination? You got 300,000 and she got 200,000. It's not fair. She could have done more, but she didn't have as many tokens, right? So we're starting to have these conversations about how do we think about tokenomics in a company to figure out how we run our labor product, right? Our product and output, not just widgets anymore. It's how much tokens do I need to run my company digitally?
But it's a truer metric, right? Because it encompasses all of the resources. Token encompasses all of the resources, not just the labor unit, not just the time unit.
Yeah, because it's output, right? It's just how much did I spend to get out?
But that really works if you're weighting the value of it on token output, right, versus quality of token.
100%. Well, and so here's the thing. We don't know yet, right? Because the models are here. They're going to eventually get to here. I don't know what that quality looks like here. But then you also have to think about, well, how do we think about that, right? Do I need 25 people? What if I could do it with more tokens and less people? Or maybe less tokens, more people? Is there a balance for that, right? So we're starting to think about these things. At least these were the conversations we were having yesterday, of companies that are looking at when they're using AI and they're using LLMs, they're spending a lot of money on tokens, especially if they're doing it in the cloud and they're not on-prem. So that becomes a constraint. So how do you start thinking about weighing output against token spend versus constraint versus labor costs, right? This is a new thing that we have to think about. So that's what's changing in that space.
Would it be safe? Is it okay to ask another question?
Okay.
Would it be safe to say that from an urban policy point of view, what you are doing is initiating an experiment in urban policy,
Yeah.
a directional urban policy, right, for the rest of the country to look at and emulate and iterate?
I love that you said that. If you go read the MOU we have with Nvidia, it's a pilot program for the future of economic development. That's exactly what they called it.
Is
Yeah.
there anyone else that you're drawing inspiration from? Are there things people have done in the past? Or are there other people trying to do this and you're looking at them as models? Like, just curious, because it's a really cool thing, and I wonder where you're getting some of your ideas from.
So we took it. There's a lot of cities in the country and globally that are doing variations of like this approach, right? You've got Pittsburgh. They're pushing robotics. It's insane what they're doing in Pittsburgh. Cleveland, Ohio is just check out what they're doing in the space with innovation. Obviously, Silicon Valley, like you're always going to have some cool stuff. San Jose, they're doing some really cool stuff. Florida right now, so Jensen's co-founder, Chris, gave him, I think, $70 million, and they did a program called HyperGator. And so they're training all the universities or the university itself on just all this really cool technology. So there's places doing it. We did it without that kind of funding. So we didn't come in with $100 million or anybody else. We just said, hey, how do we build it bootstrap from the grounds up and play on the fact that Folsom and Rancho Cordova historically have been like Nerdville. Like it really has. Like people forget this, but like there were rockets and like the space race out here a long time ago. And those smart people made kids. Those smart kids are still here, I promise you. Like there's a lot of smart people in this region. They just don't have a creative outlet. And so it's always been kind of, and I think everybody before us, like all the different groups have tried to push this. We were lucky enough to take that momentum, find some big partners, use the use cases of what everybody in this region has done and say, look at what they're doing with zero funds. Look at what they're doing without like billions of dollars in investment. What if we started bringing money to this region? Like, how crazy would that be if it actually worked? Because this is the normal city. Like in the United States, 100,000 people is about right there.
Okay, but if you're not throwing money at the problem,
Yeah.
by the way, it never works in the long term because
Yeah.
there's no long term. There's just money spent,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so what can you contextualize what you're doing or differentiate what you're doing versus the other urban experience? Because as I read whatever I read, and then also listening to you, it sounds like what you're betting on is the human element,
Yeah.
which other people are not hyper-focused on.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest element that we believe in. I really believe, and this is going to sound dumb, I really believe in this region. Like, I really, really, really believe, mainly in Rancho Cordova, not that I don't like Folsom, but I really like Rancho. But I really believe that you have this weird, unique setup in Sacramento where we've always kind of been government nonprofit and healthcare, and those traditionally are people who give a crap about people more than I'd say the traditional tech companies. Well, and they've been here for 40, 50 years, right? Well, those people had kids, and those kids were raised by people who cared about people. And you find that a lot of the people in Sacramento, for whatever reason, genuinely like people. Like, there's people who will go out of their way to donate time, donate effort, donate money. I'd say we're one of the most genuinely philanthropic regions. I mean, look at what you guys do. SMUD, you guys are at everything, donate to everything, right? You participate in nonprofit workforce. You have since inception, right? I can name 20 companies in the region that are all about that. And so how do you take that goodwill and those good humans and give them an opportunity to compete, right? And so Sadie has been the person who had influence. She could call OpenAI. She can call Nvidia. And she was like, I just want to use my influence with women in data and everybody else to bring it to this region and bet that with friends like GSEC and all these different organizations and universities, could we get everybody to believe that this could work and get them to put their effort into it and to something that could be meaningful?
Can you talk about your 24-month timeline?
Yeah, it started in January. We have 8 deliverables, and
Like this last January or the January before last?
no, just January. We just started, so we're 3 months in. So we're already working on phase 2. But yeah, we're building a digital twin for the city of Rancho Cordova.
What did you just say?
A digital twin?
Really?
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. Because Nvidia has Omniverse, so if you could build some cool stuff. And we have a great development team. We have some really cool people that we recruited. We are building an OMP, an orchestration management platform. So it's the first platform. Sadie patented the concept and all this cool stuff. But basically, think of it as a CRM for the triangle. So how does government know what enterprise is doing in the space? How does enterprise know what education is doing in the space? How do we track it all on one central platform? And then how do we take that at the end of the year and show meaningful outcomes to that information? Like, how do we know what everybody here is doing? How do we measure it? How do we show impact so we can tell a story? That's all data is really the best for, is just telling a story. We have to be able to tell that story, right? So we built that. We're doing hackathons. We're doing all kinds of fun stuff. A lot of recruitment for companies. So we've been really good at recruiting companies. We brought some really cool companies in to Rancho Cordova. But yeah, I can send it out. It's all public information.
So this is where the scale of your experiment works in your favor, because you couldn't do this in Pittsburgh.
100%.
You couldn't build it out in Pittsburgh
No.
like that.
And nobody cares about Rancho. In the grand scheme of things, the greater Sacramento region has not looked at Rancho as the place to be, right? They haven't. Although it has been growing. We bet that. The fastest housing market in the region. They're growing pretty quick. And SMUD's getting a bunch of demand for data center power now and compute power now. And they were actually the reason Solidigm, you guys don't get a lot of credit for it, but you're the reason Solidigm landed in Rancho. Because you guys stepped up and put 5 megawatts into a research facility so they could make it happen. Now, you guys did it in like 4 months, 5 months. It was insane. Yeah, it was. You guys did an amazing job. It was super awesome. So we have these amazing partners, but nobody's sitting in the room with all of them going, guys, let's work on the same problem. Because if we don't, you're going to go work on your problem, I'm going to go work on my problem. And then the cool part about it is the last phase, which I'll just, whatever, is the federal dollars. So there's a lot of federal money, but they don't like to spend money unless you have money or you can show results. So we got to show results, right? But we have more money coming in. We have more commitment partners. We have some really cool developers that want to come in and think about that 15 million square feet of office space that's 50% occupied.
Is that what Aggie Square is about?
Aggie Square was life science. They were totally different. They're way cool. They're doing cool stuff over there. That was way big money. But we've got a bunch of office space that could be converted and changed and re-envisioned. So we're really grateful to Rancho. They're crazy. They like to take on big risk. And I think they're going to get big reward for it. But yeah, that's what we're building, to sum it all up and answer your original question. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right.
So you work for J.P. Morgan and your name's J.P.?
So my name is J.P. Morgan, funny enough. It's Justin Peter Morgan. But I used to work for a different company in banking, but not J.P. Morgan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easier because if I tell people Justin, they would go Jason. Nobody ever got Justin. You know this pain. Feel it. So, but yeah, go ahead.
I was going to show my age on this one. So, I'm familiar with business incubators. That's been around for a long time. And it seems to me, I was kind of thinking, putting my head around what you're building here, and really this is the Biosphere 3 of business, community, education, all-encompassing environment to keep it all.
Well, and I think the reason it works is you're democratizing knowledge. Like a lot of people say it's democratizing intelligence. That's you get into funny language when you start going that route. I think it's if you democratize knowledge, and what democratizing knowledge does is it creates an equal playing field for a short period of time. I really believe that. And so we have a short period of time where everybody is equal, and we get to compete on an equal playing field as this kind of transforms. And I think if we're good at that, and we develop a system to develop a workforce, cultivate startups, really have a collaborative unit where we can attract state and federal dollars successfully, because that's one of the major components of getting that. And we get some university and some K through 12 collaboration and build that model. I think we're going to get a lot of traction. I just believe that. Yeah.
Do you have hard and fast success metrics?
I think mine are different than the company's.
By the way, Shirley's our journalist here.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I want to give them to you, but I'll probably get in trouble. So yes, I have my own personal hard and fast metrics, like the K through career education, basically platform / physical space. It was supposed to be started in 24 months. I started it in 2 months, so I shouldn't have done that. Went way too fast. So we're kind of like trying to temper some of that. So I'd like to see a couple of things built and successful before the end of the 24-month period. But if we just complete what's in our contract, we will be successful.
All right, if there's no more questions, I want to thank JP for joining us.
Hey, thanks.
Startup Folsom.